Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the 2022 USAID Higher Education Global Evidence Summit. My name is Samantha Alvis, and I am the Senior Advisor for Higher Education in USAID's Center for Education. I have the pleasure of serving as your MC today for the start of the summit's third and final week. Today, we are exploring the theme of higher education and private sector engagement. And tomorrow, we'll focus on a convergence of our summit themes and the role of higher education in crisis and conflict-affected settings, and its role in supporting democracy. My co-host for the event, Jennifer LeBron, leader of the Higher Education Learning Network, or the HELEN, will help lead us through tomorrow's themes. However, our goal for today is to explore private sector engagement and what that means from many different perspectives. As many of you know from joining us for the first 2 weeks, our goal in hosting this Global Evidence Summit is to expand the evidence base to better understand what works to strengthen higher education systems and institutions, and how higher education can be a central actor in supporting sustainable development across sectors. These themes were selected through a collaborative process with the Higher Education Learning Network community and our Summit Steering Group in support of the USAID Higher Education Learning Agenda. Today's theme, private sector engagement, is drawn from question 7. How can higher education institutions collaborate most effectively with the private sector to enhance the relevance and quality of teaching and learning and research and innovation? While we've heard about the importance of collaboration with the private sector throughout the summit's earlier themes of innovation and employability, today we'll be hearing directly from higher education institutions, government representatives, and private sector actors who have successfully engaged in mutually beneficial collaboration. We'll hear about the successes of these collaborations and the challenges that are a part of creating and sustaining them. But before we dive into the programming, I do have a few reminders. Today's content, as well as sessions for the entire summit, are available by looking to the left of your screen if you're on a computer, or the bottom of the screen on the mobile Whova app, where you will see a menu of options. Click on the agenda to view content and add sessions to your personal agenda. I'd also suggest that you take a moment today and click through tomorrow's agenda to find our general plenary session, the Higher Education Learning Network launch. In that session tomorrow, we will be celebrating the official launch of the HELEN with some fun videos and a group photo. You'll find a link in the description of that session tomorrow where you can download the I Am the HELEN virtual background or print out a sign that you can hold up tomorrow so that you can be part of the celebration. So feel free to go ahead and get your background or photo ready today and join us for tomorrow's HELEN launch session. I also want to remind everyone that in that Whova platform, you can send messages, read profiles, or suggest virtual meetups. And you all are doing a great job of doing all of these things. You can do this by viewing the community tab. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, join in all the conversations, reach out to someone you want to connect with, and use that platform to connect with others in the global higher education community. We also encourage you while you're in sessions to actively use the chat box to comment and share throughout the program. As we all know, this is a global event, and as global citizens, it's important to remember that not all of our participants may have the same internet connectivity. As we feature speakers from around the globe during our live program, we ask that you be patient should anyone lose connections or experience any technical difficulties related to connection speeds. I'd like to remind you that captioning is available, and you can access the captions by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. Additionally, all plenary and concurrent sessions are being recorded and will be posted to the Summit website following the live event. Now, without further ado, I'm so excited to begin today's program with a dear colleague of mine who is often a go-to resource for me when I need a thought partner on something that we're working on in the higher education space, Mr. Tillah. Mir is the USAID Philippines Senior Education Advisor and the mission's Higher Education Project Lead. In this role, he has managed the Science, Technology, Research, and Innovation from Development, or STRIDE program. You may have caught his poster presentation earlier in the summit, as well as the Philippine Business for Education program that works to improve employment opportunities with a significant investment from the Philippine private sector. Mir has had a career in government, civil service, and academia, previously teaching at the Institute of Political Economy at the University of Asia and the Pacific before joining USAID. Mir, thank you so much for joining us today. Mir,
thank you. Sorry, thank you so much.
Great, thank you. And Mir will be joined today in our fireside chat by Dr. Fita Aldaba, Undersecretary of the Competitiveness and Innovation Group of the Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, of the Philippines. Dr. Aldaba fulfills a key role in the formulation and implementation of the Inclusive Innovation Industrial Strategy of the Philippines, which puts innovation at the heart of the country's new industrial policy. Dr. Aldaba is also a governor of the Philippine Board of Investments, the country's primary industry development arm and lead investment promotion agency. She's also a researcher turned policymaker, previously serving as a senior research fellow and acting vice president of the Philippine Institute for Development Studies prior to joining DTI. Dr. Aldaba, thank you for staying up late to join us as well. And with those introductions, Mir, I'll hand this over to you to introduce us to these 5 keywords in higher education, industry, and government collaborations. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Sam. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone from wherever you are. Thank you, Sam, for the introduction. And we are very honored to have been invited by the Center for Education to speak at the plenary of the 3rd week for the Global Evidence Summit for Higher Education of USAID. I think that you'd be surprised, some of you who have seen the keywords that we will be discussing today, namely trust, expectations, incentives, success. And we cheated a bit. We said 5, but the last one is actually 2 words, sustainability and scale. They're not the typical topics that you would expect when discussing industry-academe collaboration. And they're more, I would say, focused on general principles rather than the technical aspects of higher education. The other probably surprising thing for some of you is why Dr. Aldaba and why the Department of Trade and Industry. DTI is not a ministry that focuses on education, even though we are an education program. So why did we work with her and why did we have this close collaboration to address the challenges of higher education and human capital development for innovation? So this is a very non-traditional approach to what is a perennial and traditional problem of higher education. That is, how do we engage the private sector to spur inclusive growth and development? So Ma'am Fita, as I call her, or Yusek Fita, has been an amazing partner of USAID, and we are very honored to have her join us tonight. The challenge now is how do we condense, ma'am, our experience of almost a decade working together on these things into the 20 minutes that we have. Ma'am, just to get it started, the 5 keywords when we were planning out this session, trust was, I think, number 2 or number 3 on the list. But you had requested that trust be the first thing that we should be talking about. And I was curious, and maybe you can share with our audience, why trust? Why do you put so much importance on trust?
Thank you, Mir, and greetings to everyone. I feel so honored to be here. Okay, so to address the question, well, I think trust is fundamental to the collaboration between DTI, and USAID. Trust has been the foundation of our collaboration and the synergies that we built together. If you recall, back then we were operating in an environment characterized by mistrust between academia and industry, siloed teams, limited information and knowledge sharing, weak collaboration between government agencies, and competitive rather than collaborative attitude among stakeholders. You, Mir, were actually among the first persons who went to my office in 2014 when I was appointed in DTI. And we agreed to explore how we could promote academe-industry collaboration. And in the beginning, it was really more of a cooperative working relationship. And reflecting on our experience over the last 8 years, USAID has been a reliable and competent partner, sincere, caring, and supportive. We both believe that what we are doing is vital to bridge the gaps between industry and academe and create a more robust innovation ecosystem. With common values and objectives, we were able to build trust, the kind of trust that has led to strong collaboration, the kind that generates creative breakthroughs. And one important breakthrough is the Regional Inclusive Innovation Center, or RIC, which has become our space for collaboration and innovation. The RICS was a product of our joint efforts to bridge the gaps in our innovation ecosystem. The RICS are platforms linking the different stakeholders in the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystems to accelerate the commercialization of R&D investments and for universities and industries to work together in addressing societal and industry issues. We went together conducting FGDs across different regions all over the country, and we both agreed that this is an important priority and we committed to make it work. And because we trust each other, we took the risks of piloting 4 regional inclusive innovation centers in 4 key cities located in various parts of the country. And all this did not happen instantly. It was a journey that we decided to embark on together. It was also a process of discovery. And this entailed a lot of close interaction, constant dialogues, and engagement, not only between USAID and DTI, but as well as with other stakeholders from industry, academe, and other government agencies. One more thing is that USAID did not impose the innovation projects for us to implement, but we both went through the process of analysis and conducting stakeholder consultations. And together we co-created our innovation project, the RICS. And with our common objective of nation building, shared values, and belief that what we do is actually far greater than our individual organizations, we are now closer to our goal of creating a robust innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem, together with the RICS serving as catalyst to drive more academe-industry collaboration.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I'm glad you pointed out the environment that existed before, that environment of mistrust. And one of our programs, the STRIDE program, and actually ran an innovation ecosystem assessment. And to everyone's surprise, or perhaps not so much, it was the lack of trust, right? Not just between industry and academia, but between universities themselves, and even between government agencies. And I was just wondering if you could talk about how did we, I guess, some of the things that we had to do, some of the challenges that we had to go through before we found that level of trust that led to this eventual co-creation for the Inclusive Innovation Centers and our work on Philippine innovation.
Well, looking at our university industry collaboration, I think these are really important because these are the main sources of external knowledge and technologies for companies. But in the Philippines, the most dominant form of university industry collaboration has been student internship. Collaborations with respect to training and teaching, and particularly research and exchange of knowledge and technology transfer, are still not that widespread. I guess setting up these forms of collaboration between universities and industrial firms is really not easy. And these forms of collaboration need a long-term and continuing program of partnership and commitment, which also takes some time to build. We know that the two are operating in two separate environments. Industry is not looking into academia for theoretical but applicable knowledge. Academics, meanwhile, are sometimes not inspired by proving their research with industry. And all this created differences in terms of expectations, requirements, and collaboration goals, leading to conflicting expectations and misunderstanding. And then firms, they lack full information about the capabilities of the academe. And so there are trust issues and skills mismatches, and hence they end up just relying on foreign sources or collaborate with their customers or parent companies. And from a corporate perspective as well, projects need to be timely, and participation of the academics cannot depend on semester schedules, student assistant availability, and fit in with class or publication interests. Industry also thinks that the academic world has little awareness of the pressures of marketplace and that they tend to be too theoretical, too jargony. And from the perspective of the academe, the goal is to publish. There are concerns in attracting commercial funds like loss of academic independence, danger of compromising their academic values, and loss of control over quality and purpose. And so to address these challenges, we need to create a coordination mechanism to serve as venue for facilitating discussion and communication between industry and academe, which the RIIC platform tries to address. And government should also provide more R&D funding along with capacity building and human resource development programs, especially on new technologies and their applications to industries. We need to strengthen the capacity of our universities to generate new knowledge and commercialize their research, promote the development of more universities, focusing not only on teaching and basic research, but also on entrepreneurial engagement and application or commercialization of scientific knowledge. And to develop these capacities, we need to support the transformation of the university's organizational and functional structures. And I think based on our experience, all these are necessary to enable universities to play a major role in the technological upgrading process of industries and function as a driver of high-tech development in the country.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Fita. You've already touched on actually the second key word, which is the expectations that each key stakeholder in the innovation system has. And one of the things that Sam had initially discussed with us when we first started planning out this session was really that this session was supposed to be on the language that industry and academia were speaking, and were they even speaking the same language was what we were saying. And you brought up the issue of timelines as well. You brought up the issue of timelines in that industry has a different timeline from the academics. We also talked about some of the natural barriers and the policy orientation and some of the regulations in place as well. But you do mention a very critical point, which is actually connected to our third keyword on incentives. You mentioned about how universities are incentivized to publish, which actually in certain instances might prevent the creation of a robust relationship with industry. So perhaps we can talk about some of the challenges in terms of getting industry and academia to work together, and how did we broker positive relationships, and how did we use incentives, or perhaps what disincentives did we have to address in this space?
Yes, I think incentives, they play a key role in terms of promoting the linkages between academe and industry. And in DTI, we are offering R&D incentives to companies. These are really important measures as shown by the experiences in other countries. And we are actually pursuing a new set of incentives that are being offered under the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises Act, a new law. These R&D incentives include income tax holiday, reduced corporate income tax rate, and enhanced deduction, including R&D expenses, labor and training expenses, power, and the use of domestic raw materials. Apart from this, DTI is also implementing some non-fiscal incentives. We are partnering with universities in operating shared services facilities and fabrication laboratories that researchers can use. And at the moment, we are also planning to build an industry 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution pilot factory that would serve as platform for learning and R&D collaboration between academe and industry on new technologies like robotics and industrial Internet of Things. We are now trying to finish the feasibility study on this together with Siemens. And we are also planning to build an artificial intelligence R&D center with industry and academe to facilitate the digitalization of small and medium enterprises, along with the conduct of AI R&D training. We are also linking local universities with foreign universities for industry training. We have an existing training program with Taiwan on integrated circuit design. And we are also discussing with Taiwan's Industrial Technology Research Institute, or E3, for a potential joint R&D project with universities. And we acknowledge, of course, the disincentives, and we are working together with other government agencies to improve the ease of doing business in the country. For instance, the streamlining and automation of business permits and certificates, regulatory restrictions affecting research, like there are still some product restrictions and regulations on the importation and transport of necessary inputs like chemicals, which are being used by our researchers, along, of course, with the government procurement process, wherein there are still some complexities that we need to streamline, automate, and simplify.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you bring up the procurement system, and we had talked about it, and we had said, are we going to talk about procurement, because that might be an entirely it's an entire session unto itself, right, ma'am? And
Right.
and I think for the people listening in, I think it's very important that they hear what you're doing in DTI. And that's why, even though we are a higher education program, we work very closely with you, because if we had remained within the bounds of traditional higher education partnerships, let's say a Ministry of Education, for example, all of these things, tax breaks and importation issues and procurement issues, basically things that have a knock-on effect on how universities are able to conduct their research and innovation effectively, will never be addressed, because we will be focused on, curriculum development and all of those traditional things that higher education is supposed to do. And I'm glad that you bring up all of these examples of the key aspects of the work that you do at DTI, which range from artificial intelligence all the way to advanced manufacturing. And I think that's why you're here, and we're very glad that you were able to join us to share the many things that you have been doing. So incentives, disincentives, and just on procurement, just very quickly, part of that innovation ecosystem assessment we did in 2014 did reveal that procurement was one of the reasons why there was so much mistrust and broken expectations between government, industry, and academia. And we're still trying our best to work around it. It's a law, so there's so many challenges. And so our innovation journey has made significant, has done significant milestones, but it's in no way complete yet, right? So thank you so much, ma'am. Let me go to a positive story, the success side of our work. And maybe you can just talk through some of the things that we've seen so far in our collaboration. What does success look like? Is it different for each stakeholder?
Yeah, but let me start by saying that all of us agree that we need to collaborate to create a robust innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. In terms of metrics to measure success, of course, we all differ because we have different mandates, DTI, for instance, we focus on building dynamic and innovative industries measured by the growth of university spin-offs and startups and other companies, along with the creation of new and disruptive products, processes, and business models. Another important indicator for us would be investment and employment generation, along with improved competitiveness and productivity of industries. DOST, meanwhile, looks at research projects carried out through university industry partnerships. Industry looks at increases in financial returns. Academe is focusing on publications. And in the near future, we hope to see success indicators in terms of how research is able to address problems and create innovative solutions, along with the impact of research projects and the collaboration of academe and industry, especially on the growth of MSMEs. But perhaps, Mira, at this point, let me also mention, since we're already discussing the success metrics, when you look at the ranking of the Philippines in the Global Innovation Index, from between 2014 and 2021, we have improved from rank number 74 to rank number 51 in 2021. And for the last 3 years, we've also been awarded as one of the most innovative countries among the 131 countries that were assessed.
Yes, and thank you, ma'am. And I think people have to be aware. In fact, if you backtrack a bit, two years before 2014, the Philippines was 94 out of 140 countries in the Global Innovation Index. So reaching the top 50 is no mean feat. And of course, it's mainly due to the fantastic collaboration that DTI, led by you and Secretary Lopez, as well in partnership with the Department of Science and Technology and other government agencies. And you spoke about MSMEs, and I think the success at the end of the day, we were grappling with, because there's so many other initiatives that we were doing, but at the end of the day, we all converged on the idea of making innovation work for businesses, and that would drive inclusive growth, right? And that's the genesis of the concept of the Regional Inclusive Innovation Center, a virtual network in the regions that would basically lead the collaborative effort. And so in terms of the RICs, how do you think the RICs are contributing to this push for MSME development through innovation? And what does success look like in these innovation centers?
Well, it would help tremendously, especially in linking together our MSMEs with the startups, with large companies, as well as with co-working spaces, with incubators, accelerators, R&D centers. So we're financing institutions. We're actually practically trying to link everyone within the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. Remember, this is one of the main issues that we're trying to address, the fragmentation of our ecosystem. And hence, through the RICs, what we really want is for all these networks and connections to be built, and for all the different stakeholders to work together and collaborate, and for all of us to be able to build a robust innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. And of course, at the end of the day, it will all be about addressing poverty, increases in income, and improving the lives of our people.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And we're coming up on time. We have probably a minute left to talk about the final two keywords: sustainability and of course scale. And the pandemic has basically forced a lot of changes in the markets and e-commerce, and of course the implications for human capital development. How can we work together to sustain and scale our successes?
Well, I guess we need to address the challenges. And the most difficult, I would say, would be creating a network of stakeholders who understand and trust each other, and who can work through their respective limitations. And like what I've said, we established a collaboration and facilitation mechanism through the RICs that serves as a platform, as a venue for government, academe, industry dialogues to understand societal and industry problems and formulate solutions together. Of course, another challenge I think that I should be mentioning is how to transform the universities to become enablers or major players in the technological upgrading process and function as drivers of high-tech development in the country. And for the future, I'm looking at two new, very important laws that's going to support the development of our innovation and startup ecosystem and to help us sustain our engagement with the private sector, especially in strengthening academe and industry linkages. We have the Philippine Innovation Act, which provides an opportunity to create innovation programs linking industry and academe, as well as expanding and sustaining the growth of RIICs. The Innovative Startup Act offers fiscal incentives and programs to support university spin-offs and startups. And then we also have a new program here, the Philippine Skills Framework, which serves as a common language used by industry, by the workers, academe, and training institutions to ensure that the skills and competencies needed by companies in the future would be sufficiently provided. It promotes lifelong learning. This program is also crucial in addressing perennial problem of skills mismatch. And it's also very important as we prepare the workforce for the jobs of the future and as companies pursue their digital transformation plans. And let me end by saying that in the Philippines, the people are at the center of our new industrial policy and industrial transformation plan, which are based on science, technology, and innovation. Our main approach is through government, academe, and industry collaboration, particularly on human resource development, reskilling and upskilling the workforce, and improving our R&D capacity.
Okay, thank you so much, Ma'am Fita. And I just want to say that USAID has been very lucky to have found a champion in you. And thank you so much for sharing your valuable time with us, and good luck on all of us on our shared goals and our collaboration moving forward. So back to you, Sam.
Thank you so much, Mir and Dr. Aldaba. I'm so sorry that we couldn't give you 2 hours on the main stage. It's such a good conversation, and I think really illuminates, even though we often talk about higher education and private sector engagement, what we're really talking about is a triple helix that includes not only higher education and the private sector, but Madam Aldaba, you really spoke to the importance of having government as part of that triple helix, really working together to provide that enabling environment and the resources. And Mir, and I think it really came through that it reinforces a message that you shared at the 2020 Global Education Learning Series, and that I quote all the time, that really we're in the business of making friends, right? Back to our keywords. And that's at the heart of our higher education and industry collaborations. Thank you both again for being here to kick off week 3 of the program.
Maraming salamat. Mabuhay.
Thank you so much. We'll try to answer the questions on the chat. They're very interesting. We'll just send them to you via email.
Great, thank you so much. And now we'd like to ask our audience to respond to this fireside chat and to these 5 keywords that were introduced during the conversation. You'll see a poll coming up on your screen with each of the five keywords. And we'd like you to take a moment to respond to the questions on the screen. Which of these 5 keywords is most important and relevant to your work and the context that you are working in? We'll give you a few moments here to respond to that poll. And while you're responding, we also wanted to say if you're interested in learning more about higher education and industry and government collaborations, I invite you to take a look at a new resource produced by more of our fantastic virtual student federal service interns at USAID, the Higher Education and Industry Collaboration Primer. It'll speak to a lot of what we heard from Mir and Dr. Aldaba today about the enabling environment for successful partnerships. We'll be posting a link to that document in the chat. And thank you all for responding to the poll. It looks like trust, our first keyword, is the one that is speaking to people. So Mir, Dr. Aldaba, I think in the conversations about moving trust out of the 2nd or 3rd place in the list up to the 1st place really sets that foundation that is needed for these partnerships to be successful. All right. We know that you may have additional resources, questions, or evidence that can help us to address this learning agenda question that we're focused on today. How can higher education institutions collaborate most effectively with the private sector to enhance the relevance and quality of teaching and learning and research and innovation? So as we've done the last 2 weeks of the summit, we invite you to contribute to a resource palooza during our break today. You'll see an announcement on the HUVA platform that the Resource Palooza is open. When you see that announcement, please just take a couple of minutes, find resources related to private sector engagement and higher education, and add it to the platform. When you go to the community section of HUVA, you can search for Resource Palooza and find the Private Sector Resource Palooza board. Again, we'll take those resources any way that you can share them, link, a reference, a PDF, whatever form, and we'll be reviewing those to update our higher education learning agenda gap map over the next few months. Thank you in advance for joining that Resource Palooza. And you might remember this from last week and the week before of the session as well. We realized that folks may still have questions related to this theme of private sector engagement. So we also invite you to contribute to our Further Learning whiteboard, a link of which is being added to the chat right now. So feel free as you are moving into different sessions today to add any areas of future learning that you have related to this topic. And we'll be using these responses to help plan future events and resources for the Higher Education Learning Network, the HELEN. And with that, I will conclude our opening session for week 3 and move us into our research and practice sessions. Our research and practice sessions contribute to what works in higher education related to the summit's key themes and key takeaways. Join your session by clicking on the session name in the agenda to your left menu panel if you're on a computer, or look at the bottom of your app and find the agenda tab if you're in the HUVA app on your mobile device. Join your session by clicking on the session name in the agenda. Don't forget to come back to our next plenary session, Conversations Outside the C-Suite, which will feature 3 representatives from private sector partners representing health, agriculture, and technology who engage in higher education collaborations to better understand their motivations and how they approach working with higher ed. We will see you then, and until then, enjoy the rest of today's summit programming.